realize a lot of you were watching me dancing in my seat there to the intro music instead of watching the intro there. I hope you appreciated my funky moves. It is Tuesday afternoon, live from downtown in Washington, D.C. I'm very grateful in this hour we get to have one of my favorite people on planet Earth, Congressman Gosar, will be joining us. Fresh off that Prescott, Arizona MAGA rally, or should I say peaceful protest, given that some in the media are already complaining about the lack of social distancing there. I didn't hear any complaints about the Women's March, by the way, this last weekend in Washington, D.C. that was not socially distanced, but there you go. That's the hypocrisy, as usual, from our friends in the mainstream media. Governor Eric Greitens, who's launching a brand new show here on Real America's Voice. It's called Actionable Intelligence. He'll be joining us in the final two segments today as well to walk us through what actionable intelligence is and why that's going to be a must-watch show for all of you guys and gals out there. But before I want to bring Congressman Gosar into the equation today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about just how magnificent you are. I've got Nigel Farage calling in live here. I'm afraid I can't patch him through. Here's the thing. The Hunter Biden story is only getting bigger and bigger, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger. You've probably heard of some of the details that people are pouring over at the moment, and whether it's my friends Matthew Tierman and Jack Posobiec, a whole bunch of other people, Peter Schweitzer, working on these things. Obviously, we've heard from Mayor Giuliani on the War Room, Stephen K. Bannon, and more people are being brought into this fold to go through what is just an immense amount of data. So I know there's some frustration out there, and people are like, well, we want more details, we want all the details, we want full copies of the hard drives immediately available. Well, people have to go through it first. And I don't think people quite realize that this October surprise took a lot of people by surprise who are working on it now. Didn't expect to maybe get hold of so many details that we have at our fingertips. So we're working on a whole lot of stories. The National Pulse will be breaking some of those. Other news outlets will be breaking some of those. Just the News will be breaking some of those. You're going to want to be paying very close attention. And I want to talk about how magnificent you are, because you've managed to get around the mainstream media's feed on this. You know, the disinformation that they're putting out there about how this is Russian info and, you know, foreign source leaks and all of that. What you've done, and it's amazing that Axios even covered this morning. Axios is very much the kind of for-sale news outlet that focuses here in Washington, D.C. on making lobbyists very wealthy, right? And Axios pops a story this morning that says, hey, even though Twitter was suppressing the Hunter Biden story, even though the mainstream media wouldn't cover it, I think CNN had on their front page of their website this morning something about Fauci. Remember him? Total irrelevance to this election. We're looking at smoking gun information here, people. And CNN's talking about Dr. Fauci. Well, he still managed to make it the most viewed story all month. Just massive traffic to the Hunter Biden story. I'm actually going to pull it up here, if I can, just so that you know what Axios is saying. And you know that it is your job, it's been your job, and you're doing a fantastic job of it, at making sure other people get to see these details. And whether it's details of the financial crimes that are going to come out here, or worse, or different, it's your job. You know, you want to talk actionable intelligence, which is the name of Governor Greitens' new show on this network. This is actionable intelligence. This is the kind of thing that you put your shoulder to the wheel for. And I'm not just saying this for my benefit. I'm saying it so that when you guys share something, whether it's a tweet, or post to Facebook, or post to Parler, I think they call it parlaying. When you do that, you have to know that you are a force multiplier. You have to understand that you are fundamental to the news now. You are the news now. You are the people out there who are making sure that your neighbors are reading these stories. You are the people out there who are making sure that your colleagues are reading these stories. You're the people out there who are playing interference against the New York Times and CNN and the rest of them. So every time you go to post something and you think, I'm going to leave that one off, or I'm not going to hit retweet on this one, or I'm not going to subscribe to this, don't do it to yourself, and don't do it to your friends and your family and your colleagues and your neighbors. You have a duty. A lot of people ask me, and I'm going to be asking Eric Greitens this at the end of this show when he comes on to talk about his new show, why we do what we do. Why am I here every day? Why am I sitting in this chair at 3 p.m. every day? Believe me, it's not for the money. It's because you look at the state. I mean, I'm from England. You look at the state of the media. Look at the BBC. Many of you won't know this in this country, but the British Broadcasting Corporation, you have to pay a license. You have to pay a license to own a television in the UK, to watch live TV, a license. And that money goes to the BBC. And the BBC pumps out left-wing propaganda. It pumps out cultural Marxist propaganda. It's 5 billion British pounds sterling every year that is taxed from people's licenses for their TVs and handed to the left liberal media. So that's why I decided to get into this business. And it's why I'm so delighted that you guys are all in the business too. When we come back, Congressman Paul Gosar. Stick with us. Really delighted to bring on. I don't want to waste any more time here talking myself. I want to bring on one of my favorite people. Congressman Paul Gosar joins us here on the National Pulse today. Congressman, thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure, Raheem.
You're an incredibly busy person. I follow your work intently. It feels like sometimes you're 4, 5, 6 years ahead of just so many issues. You look at the Justice Department today and the announcements over Google and antitrust. We've been talking about these things for an awful long time, you and I, both on the show and offline. And I'm sure you don't mind me sharing with people that you have been studious about this big tech censorship issue. But before we get to that topic, I've got to tell you I'm a little bit upset with you, Congressman, because I would have loved to be at the rally. You know, Prescott is one of my favorite places in the entire world. Where was my invite?
Oh, you are always welcome, Raheem. But it was 5 hours in the sunshine. That's why I'm a little bit red, like your background. But there were tens of thousands of people there to see the president, and he loved it. He absolutely loved it.
It was a sight to behold. I see the media have been attempting to dunk on you guys. So a lack of social distancing. I saw your tweet about it. You said, what did you say? You said it was, I think I lost you there for a second. You said it was a peaceful protest. I hope you can still hear me, Congressman. I want to get to this big, okay, I was not sure if the big tech censors were fiddling with our feed here. I didn't mean to use fiddling with our feet so soon after the Jeffrey Toobin incident as well. Oh, God. Yeah. Now, Congressman, we have a good laugh here on this show. Congressman, talk to us about big tech, because you're making some strides on this area, incredibly important. Tell us what's the latest, please.
Yeah, so just last week we saw a couple things happen in censorship on Section 230, which is this broad blanket immunity that has been given to the platforms, not just being as platforms, but also as publishers. We saw Clarence Thomas start making some comments about taking this case on with a full bench. We also saw Josh Hawley actually question Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Barrett, as to outlines of that. She didn't really respond, nor should she have. But we're now starting to see some real interesting things starting to happen, particularly after what transpired or what tried to transpire with Facebook and Twitter in regards to the New York Post and Hunter Biden story.
Yeah, so, look, I mean, the Hunter Biden story, Congressman, is just an archetypal example, right, of how these guys put their fingers on the scales. And Twitter comes out a day after, or whatever it was, 12 hours after they had totally suppressed this story, right? And let's get some scope on this. Let's be very clear about what happened here. It wasn't that Twitter was just kind of tinkering around the edges, as we've seen before, to stop things trending or whatever, right? They were banning accounts en masse for sharing an article in one of the nation's oldest newspapers. This is power like we've never seen it before. Not just in this country, but in the entire world we've never seen this amount of power. And it's shocking. It's scary. It's devastating to many people who kind of buy into like a fair use agreement thing with these big tech firms, and then they just come around and go, just kidding, you're gone now. People have lost careers as a result of this, and I wonder what other news we've lost over the years that this has been going on, Congressman. So, I mean, what are we supposed to do when Twitter comes out and they go, oh yeah, by the way, we were a little bit heavy-handed on that, but we're still not going to let the New York Post publish to social media until they do what we tell them to do?
Well, I think what you saw is, the Attorney General Barr looking at antitrust, filing antitrust against them. But the one thing I want to make sure people understand is if you use antitrust first, you're not changing it. Instead of the 5 big sharks circling around you, you're just going to make a herd of piranha. You're going to get eaten up one way or the other. It's just how big the bite size. So you have to limit this section of Section 230, and that's what my bill does. It basically doesn't allow this broad-based immunity. It defines what is illegal language by the Department of Justice, for trafficking human beings, terrorism, as well as drug dealings. And then what ends up happening, it still puts the onus back on people when they want to make a claim. However, what it does is it gets rid of that broad-based immunity and that ability for these big platforms to censor what you just saw on the New York Post.
Right. And can you give us, because I'm not even a particularly expert type on legislation and how this comes together. Can you give us, the audience, kind of an update on how it's coming together? Has it been is it written in full? When can we expect some movement on it?
Yeah, so what we did, we stopped the Censorship Act, and introduced by myself as well as Senator Kennedy. And what we're looking at is once again to get rid or limit this broadband immunity that the platforms actually get in censorship aspects. So it defines that language, and then it puts the onus back on to the platforms to allow you as a consumer to put a filter on whatever you would like to have as a filter. But it makes it a contract between you and the platform, easily done by the platforms, by the way. So the onus is right there. The second bill that we've actually put with Senator Loeffler and Tulsi Gabbard is don't push my buttons. And what this basically tells people is every time you're using the platforms, they're gaining all the information, whether you're looking at, for example, if you were going on a vacation to Tahiti, all of a sudden all these advertisements comes on travel for you. Well, that may be fine and dandy, but they have to have our permission in this case in order to do that. And so I think it's only proper that we're empowering the consumer in these situations with these platforms. Not to even imagine what the Democrats brought up in their judiciary hearing, and that is the coercive aspects and the antitrust aspect in which they mimic smaller businesses that were very profitable and put them out of business by doing it themselves on the platform.
Right. Congressman, just hang on. We're going to go to a quick break now, but we'll be back very shortly. Just a quick 2-minute break here. Congressman Paul Gosar walking us through what's going to happen with this big tech censorship and how he's taking action on your behalf, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a delight to have the Congressman on the show. We're great fans of his. We'll be back in just a second. Welcome back to the National Pulse, and welcome back to Congressman Paul Gosar, walking us through these two bills that he's been just furiously and studiously working away on for months and months now, and we're delighted that there's so much action that seems to be taking place now on the big tech censorship issue. Congressman, some people have been frustrated about this for a long time, and I wouldn't get much respect from my audience if I didn't ask you, why does it seem that so many of your colleagues, your Republican colleagues, have been dragging their heels on this? I mean, we're reading more details coming out of the Senate right now of Senate Republicans saying, we don't really want to pursue this thing. I mean, what is going? You see these big conservative think tanks, supposedly conservative think tanks, taking money from big tech companies to peddle their line. I mean, what is all that about?
Well, I think that the Republicans feel that these are private companies, and that the government intruding on that. But once again, maybe it's a private platform. But when you go into the aspect of publishing, now that interferes in regards to our First Amendment right and freedom of speech. And if it is a methodology in regards to communicating, then we have to have some rules and regs in regards to who's restricting that and who's being heard. This goes back to Ted Cruz talking to one of the professors, one of the experts in regards to the platforms. And he talked about in 2016, the platforms were responsible for moving 2.4 million voters to Hillary Clinton. And then he made a comment that they were prepared for as many as 15.5 million people to move towards whoever was going up against Donald Trump. This is unbelievable when you're skewing elections, when you're changing the profiles of people that are in wrongdoing in regards to Hunter Biden. This information is cataclysmic. I mean, and particularly if the FBI, my friend Andy Biggs and I joined up with a number of our colleagues saying, when did you have this computer? And why wasn't it utilized in regards to the impeachment of the president? This is really, really tough stuff. And we got to make sure that people are playing by the rules. And, there's nothing different than what we're doing than forming a contract.
I know you mentioned Tulsi Gabbard in the last segment as being somebody who's been involved with this as well. What is the response from the left? Can we expect Democrats to sign on to this?
It's going to be a hard sell, to be honest with you, Raheem. We're going to have to do our work. Our work's cut out for us. I think they see the antitrust application to this, but they're also benefiting from the censorship in regards to what's going on with Donald Trump, with people like you and me and, the Freedom Caucus and all that. So that's going to be the tough sale, particularly with Nancy Pelosi being in charge. However, once again, we were my group of brothers and sisters and the Freedom Caucus wanted to make a move to vacate the chair, to remove Nancy Pelosi. And I think we had an opportunity there before we left for the August break, our October break, to actually do that because there's about 25 Democrats that are fuming in regards to not seeing her remove a COVID package and working with the president through. So I think the numbers were there. And then who knows who it would have been, Clyburn or Steny Hoyer. I've been able to do a lot of things with Steny, and so who knows what could have happened.
Congressman, I want to understand where, if you've spoken with the president about this and where he sits on this issue, because he's very vocal about the tech censorship. But there was just a couple of years ago where so many of us were warning that this was about to come down the pipeline, get even bigger as a problem, affect the elections as we're seeing now. And I think a lot of people were chagrined back then to hear, we are closely monitoring the situation. It does seem like he's sort of changed from monitoring to doing on this. Any insight there?
It is. He keeps bringing it up over and over again because he sees the ramifications. But I feel bad for the president, Raheem, because when you start looking about the people that have been surrounded him, it has been the establishment that has put these people close by. And just let's look at the FBI, from Comey to McCabe now to Christopher Wray. They're blocking, they're dragging their feet on these investigations. And he's surrounded by the swamp. And this is the depth of the swamp is right here in the FBI. And Barr's got his work cut out for him, too. But once again, there's only so many things the president can do. Antitrust is one of those RICO standards, racketeering, maybe another one, aspects underneath that. But Section 230, Clarence Thomas says it very, very well. And that's why he wants to see the Supreme Court pick up this Enigma versus Malwarebytes case that the Ninth Circuit has allowed immunity to. But he wants a full bench. But he keeps coming back that the legislative body is responsible for the outlines of this. And this is what is so important, is Section 230 can only be remedied by legislation from the House, the Senate, and signed by the president.
I think it's such an important point. I mean, Section 230 protections. These should have been done away with a long time ago. Quite frankly, I mean, it's bizarre that we start the segment with this, right? I asked you the question about the Republicans and the conservative think tanks who kind of defend these big tech firms as private businesses, but when you are benefiting, when they are building their business off the back of the fact that there is legislation that protects them, i.e. the taxpayer, the U.S. citizen, is undergirding this whole system only to get screwed by these people in response. Well, then it's no longer a private company, right? There is a public interest written into the equation. And that's why I talked about the BBC in my opening monologue today. The British Broadcasting Corporation fleeces the British taxpayer out of £5 billion a year, which is the equivalent of, $6.5 billion, maybe even more a year. And what do they do with it? They just spend it on, cancel culture and cultural Marxism and pro-BLM stuff and pro-Antifa stuff. I mean, the BBC is unwatchable, and you do not want a circumstance like that in this country, believe me. Congressman, we're going to go to a quick break in just a moment, but I want to come back. I want to get your thoughts on the broader Hunter Biden question, because there are people pouring cold water on this, saying this is not a national security issue. This is absolutely a major, maybe one of the biggest national security issues we've seen in a long time, in my opinion. We'll hear from Paul Gosar in just a moment. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I'm just, you can take the boy out of England, but you can't take England out of the boy. I'm watching I'm not watching, I'm just following along with the Champions League scores live during this show. And, I'm a Man United fan, and Man United are 1-0 up, so I'm very happy. Congressman, I imagine that means absolutely nothing to you. Well,
I was watching your rugby on Sunday, early morning Sunday. So being a former rugger, it was fun to watch.
I feel like I was playing some rugby last night in the car. I was just injured my shoulder. Congressman, this story about Hunter Biden, it took a lot of people by surprise in terms of how this has worked out and the scale of this thing. I mean, this is immense. I can't tell people enough that some of the smartest minds in the country are working on this right now. But it's not necessarily even about being intelligent here. This is a volume game at this point. Going through every single one of these emails, 26,000 of them. I don't think that there is even the potential before the election of having litigated all of this by the time November the 3rd rolls around. But that just goes to show the scale of corruption that we're talking about here. There was a Democratic former senator who came out last October, 1 year ago, and he said, if Joe Biden is the nominee, then Hunter Biden will be the new Hillary Clinton's emails. And it looks like he was absolutely clairvoyant, bang on the money with that prediction, because that's exactly what's happening, Congressman, and the polls seem to be shifting as a result of it. You know, I'm a total geek when it comes to polling and following the detail and things like that, and I see them every single day, and I can see the effect that the Biden crime family story is having on the polling. Congressman, what 30,000 foot view on this? What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, the American public always realized something was amiss here. I mean, when you look at the previous administration, Raheem, whether it be Fast and Furious, Benghazi, the IRS, the unmasking, the attacks on the press, from James Risen to Cheryl Atkinson to the unmasking, they felt uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, and it's getting the information that's out there. And it's interesting that in the impeachment process, the Democrats went right at the strength of this whole case. Remember, the president talked about a computer in Ukraine. Now, isn't it interesting that we've got that? There's rumors that we've got a second computer in Ukraine to back up what we've got now with the Hunter Biden computer. And now we've got the collaboration of 28,000 emails from some of his cohorts that are in prison. So, you know, this is profound, because what we were selling was access to the presidency for the benefit of a family. This is exactly what they accused the Trump family about. And the Trump family they've lost money. But isn't it interesting, they tried to put the scrutiny on Trump when the scrutiny should have been on them.
It's always projection, right? It's always projection. But here's the thing, they're incredible at it. I mean, they have it down to a science. This projection that they do, whether it's on Ukraine, whether it's on Russia, whether it's on nepotism, all of it. They know what's going on in advance, years in advance in some cases. I mean, you've got to go back to look at the impeachment. You've got to go back to what was going on in Ukraine in 2013, 2014. And I mean, I was there. I literally went to Kiev to see what was happening on the ground. And it was cold for a start. I mean, it was freezing cold, like I never experienced before. But it was grimy, what was going on there. It was dirty. You could see the corruption on both sides, quite frankly, of that whole debacle that took place there. So they have turned this into a science of going back years and years and just projecting and projecting. I do notice, though, Congressman, I wonder if you noticed this as well, that there are some Democrats in Democrat officialdom who seem to be sick of this. I mean, we had this morning on the show, on the War Room show, one of these Democrat mayors from Northeast Pennsylvania who came on and just said, look, my constituents don't like this stuff that the Biden campaign is up to. And he predicted a big, massive win for President Trump as a result of this chicanery that we're used to seeing now from the left. So, you know, maybe you tell us, are you hearing, are there any rumblings from people you hear from on the left side of the aisle about how sick they are of having to deal with the Bidens and the Clintons and this crime syndicate in the Democratic Party?
Oh, you know, I'll bring her up again. Tulsi Gabbard. You know, here's a lady that called out Hillary Clinton in regards when she made her run for the presidency. So there's plenty of them. The problem is what is the critical mass do they have to take on the people like Nancy Pelosi and Jim Clyburn? What are those?
Well, hold on. Let me stop you right there, Congressman. Let me stop you right there, because you make a really interesting point. I'm going to pull out on this a little bit. The critical mass is the same as our side had when we wanted to get rid of the swamp creatures, you know, the Paul Ryan types on our side, right?
Absolutely. And that's why in this election, you're going to see, I will predict, that you'll see that we may take back the House, and it will come back through the Freedom Caucus. People that are looking at getting back to the constitutional prowess of this country, getting back to great again, and accountability. And that's why I've said over and over again, I think they will return us to the majority, but please hold our feet to the fire. We lost the majority when we promised people what we were going to do and didn't follow through. That's in a nutshell. And people understand that justice has not been served. And the only way we're going to serve justice is by returning it to the House to the Republicans, keep the Senate in Republicans, and return Donald Trump for another 4 years. The swamps fears that.
Congressman, we gotta go. I know you've given us so much of your time. It looks like a beautiful day there, so we're going to let you go and enjoy the rest of it. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for taking the time to come on this show. And I want to make sure everyone in the audience goes and finds Congressman Gosar's Twitter page. Make sure you're following him. Make sure you're following along with the developments coming out on the big tech issues. Congressman, again, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Raheem. Always a pleasure, sir.
All right, we'll post up the links to the Congressman's social media and everything on Twitter in just a moment. Stick around. We'll be back with Governor Eric Greitens. Welcome back to the National Pulse. Really delighted for all of you joining us. Make sure you're heading over to thenationalpulse.com. I've got a whole bunch of big scoops up there right now and more that we'll be breaking this afternoon. We're also having one of our monthly town halls this evening for our members. If you want to become one of our members, go to thenationalpulse.com/support, or you can go to fundrealnews.com. You get all sorts of benefits by joining up to be a member of the National Pulse. We call it the Nationalists. And I'm very grateful for all of you out there who do. I want to turn now to somebody who likes to steal my seat every so often. And I'm just delighted to have Governor Eric Greitens here. You are launching a new show, Actionable Intelligence. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But first, this is my chair.
Yes,
no,
sir.
I'm kidding. It's our chair now. But you'll be in the chair on Thursday, and I'll be in that chair.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. When we do our presidential debate coverage, absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure that everybody knows to tune in here to Real America's Voice for that coverage on Thursday night. Eric does such a great job of hosting that. Very professional. And I can't do that late into the day for various reasons.
But you know what? We always have fun on the show. We get a solid dose of Raheem late at night, which is important for all of your viewers, because I mean, they might see on Pandemic, they see on the National Pulse, they get the full.
Right,
that's right. Now they get their little evening Raheem dose, which is good. But yeah, honored to be joining you and the team here on Real America's Voice, man.
I did an intro today to the show, just kind of extemporaneously talking about why I do this, why I wanted to do this show when the kind folks at Real America's Voice, reached out. I want to understand, you're launching a new one.
Yeah.
I'll give you some advice. Don't do it, mate. It's so much work. So much work goes into this, and there's all these brilliant production people running around like headless chickens all the time, plugging things in. And in the meantime, doing a show like this, you have to be, all across all the news, all across all your research, planning and blocking things out and writing monologues and all of that. And I know you've got a great team as well, but let's start with that. Yeah. Why? Why are you doing the show?
Well, look, there's one really, really important reason. I've been honored to spend my life serving the country. I served as a Navy SEAL in Iraq, Afghanistan, Southeast Asia, the Horn of Africa. I did a lot of service.
I won't fight you for this chair then.
Arm wrestler, or thumb wrestler.
No.
So, but did a lot of humanitarian work overseas in places like Bosnia, Rwanda. I came home from Iraq after my team was hit by a suicide truck bomb. I was very fortunate. My wounds were minor, but a lot of the guys who I was with were hurt a lot worse than I was. And when I came home, I donated my combat pay. We started an organization called The Mission Continues to help returning wounded and disabled veterans continue to serve again here at home. I was honored to serve people as governor. And I think that right now, what the country needs is some strong, courageous voices who are willing to stand up amidst this great horde of yellow journalism. We've seen this before in American history, and we're living through a period of it again. We need to have some courageous voices and people who are out there, just regular people, like they want truth, and they know that they're not getting it. They want and need and respect people who have some real-world experience to bring them some insight. And we're going to do that on the show. We're going to bring people to truth. We're going to bring them insight. And the other thing I'm really hopeful about the show is that we are going to bring people a sense of hope. This is a country, when you look back at American history, every generation has faced challenges. It was never easy.
Right.
But we've been knitted together by all of these stories and moments of courage and compassion and common sense. And that is still there. It is as much in America now as it ever was. And I think what we need to do is sometimes take a look back with pride so that we can also look forward with confidence. Because there's a lot of work for our generation to do, and I think we can get it done.
The show is called Actionable Intelligence. Yes. When does it launch?
It launches tonight, so 6 p.m. Eastern. People they can watch the show tonight. And then at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're also going to have our law enforcement special, Blue Courage, will be on tonight. So make sure folks stay tuned, 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern tonight.
When we come back, we'll break in about 3 minutes, and when we come back, I want to ask you about your work outside of the US and how that will feed into the show and what you do and what news we bring. But I do want to ask this question because I think it's important that people understand that we're not just saying these words for platitudinous reasons. When you use the phrase actionable intelligence, I mean, action is one of our favorite words on War Room, right? And you've been in the War Room. We don't sit there, we don't put our feet up, we're not those types of people. We are action orientated. And this audience, whether it's the National Pulse audience, whether it's the War Room audience, the broader Real America's Voice audience, or your audience, they're action-oriented people. Yes. Americans are just like that, aren't they?
Well, they are, and keep in mind, look, when Benjamin Franklin was walking out of the Constitutional Convention, and you know this story, a woman came up to that would have made it even more entertaining.
What a weird story.
Even more insightful. But, a woman came up to him and said, what kind of government have you created for us? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. Baked into all of the founders' minds. And look, those men had a lot of different philosophical differences, but they all agreed that the only way that a republic remains vital is if citizens are active, if citizens are engaged. It's why we had public libraries. We wanted citizens to be informed. We wanted them to be able to take action.
Right.
Well, today, that's still just as true. People need to be informed. They need to be informed with the truth. And what we also want to do in actionable intelligence is provide people ways to both understand their world and to shape it. Right. We don't have to be passive, for example, in the face of the left's war against the police. There are things that everyone can do to get out there and support law enforcement. Lots of examples like that. And what we want to do on the show is, with a sense of humor, with a lot of wisdom, with some insights from some really interesting guests, bring that information to folks in a way that makes their lives better.
When you're done with the interesting guests, can I come on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, actually, we'd be honored to have you on, Raheem. You've done a fantastic job here on this show.
We'll come back. We want to talk about your foreign experience and what you're going to bring to the table on in terms of actionable intelligence, how that's going to work. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make sure that you set your reminders for 6 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, the first episode of Actionable Intelligence, right here on Real America's Voice with Governor Eric Greitens. It's going to be a not-to-miss event. You're going to want to be a part of this, so make sure you're staying tuned here on Real America's Voice, which you can get on Pluto, you can get it on Roku, you can find it on YouTube, and take the action of referring someone else today. Refer 2 people, refer 3 people, send an email after this show ends to your friends and family. Go, hey, I kind of like these guys. Let's get some more support, some more viewers, and most importantly of all, as Eric alluded to, let's get rid of these yellow journalists. We'll be right back. And just as we mentioned it, I get an email from the Real America's Voice team about the Thursday night coverage. We're really looking forward to that. And the next presidential debate, Governor Eric Greitens, the host of Actionable Intelligence, joins me here. In fact, why don't we use this moment to play the trailer for this new show? Airs tonight for the first time, 6 p.m. Eastern. Let's roll it.
Every day, men and women across our country put on body armor and strap on a sidearm. They stand watch, they serve, they protect. When the call goes out and others run from danger, they move toward it. They are the men and women of law enforcement. So join me, Eric Greitens, on Real America's Voice Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern for Blue Courage, restoring America's trust in law enforcement.
So that's 8 p.m. tonight. And the Actionable Intelligence is 6 p.m. tonight.
Yeah, exactly. So every night, 6 p.m. Eastern, people can tune in for Actionable Intelligence. We also have tonight, there's a special, a 1-hour special at 8 p.m., Blue Courage, Restoring America's Trust in Law Enforcement. It's a really powerful hour of TV about how we got where we're at in the country with this great war against the police launched by the left. And we also talk again about what people can do to get out there and support our law enforcement.
I'm really looking forward to that. It's about time as well, I think. And you can tell there is just this groundswell out there of people who are sick and tired of everybody realizes that there isn't perfection. There isn't perfection across institutions. There aren't perfection in people.
Correct.
But to tar all the police who put themselves out there all day, every day, like they have been doing, I just think it's such a great thing you're doing. So I'm going to be watching at 8 p.m. tonight. Look, one of the things that you mentioned was your experience overseas and what that can bring. And I got to tell you, without my experience, I was talking to Congressman Gosar about it earlier on the show. In Ukraine. I was in Ukraine in 2013-14, saw that whole thing go down, right? And we're now learning about a lot of what happened with Hunter Biden in the aftermath there. My experience in Brussels, the worst place on the planet. In the United Kingdom, we were talking about the British Broadcasting Company and the way all of that works. I wouldn't be able to sit in this chair every day and talk about these issues unless I'd had those experiences. I mean, you want to talk about mail-in ballot fraud. Britain's rife with it, but people over here don't seem to get it. So tell us a few things about what you're going to. Firstly, where were you in the world? Where did you spend a lot of time? What were you doing, and how's that going to impact your show?
So first, early on in my life, I spent a lot of time overseas doing humanitarian work. So when the ethnic cleansing was happening in Bosnia, I was overseas and I lived and worked in refugee camps. I specifically worked with children who we called unaccompanied children. They were often parents or kids whose parents had been killed or they'd been separated from their parents during the ethnic cleansing. I later worked in Rwanda and what was then Zaire, again with kids who were survivors of the genocide, kids who'd become refugees. I worked in Cambodia with kids who'd lost limbs to landmines, worked in Albania with kids in an orphanage. I worked in one of Mother Teresa's homes for the destitute and dying in Varanasi, India. So spent a lot of time kind of on the ground working with incredible people in some of the world's most difficult circumstances. And then later, of course, served as a Navy SEAL in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, Southeast Asia, and the Horn of Africa. And I have to say, I have been so blessed to have that experience from overseas, right? I mean, and spent years in England, where I actually, went to grad school and got to see kind of how, people well, at least how people looked at the U.S. from the perspective of Oxford, right? And it was really all of that time overseas. I remember reflecting. Actually, I joined the Navy. I was an old guy. I was 26 the time I joined the Navy, and I'd spent more of my adult life overseas than I had actually here in the U.S. And when I came back into the United States Navy and was kind of reintroduced to my country, having had this perspective from overseas, first it gave you, and everybody says this, kind of a cliche, but you really appreciated what was truly special about the United States. I mean, we talk about this as a country that offers more raw opportunity to more people than anywhere in the history of the planet, and it's true, and you see it. And when you've been overseas, you see the tremendous difference and contrast. You recognize for all of America's imperfections, and of course they're there are many of them, the fact that this is a country that has always been rooted in a conception of what it means to become a greater republic, that we've always been striving, that we're not a backward-looking country, but a forward-looking country, is again, it creates a sense of power that I think people often don't appreciate. The tremendous flourishing civic culture that we have, people since de Tocqueville have talked about this in the United States of America. You just don't have it, at least not to the same vibrancy and extent overseas. So all of those things, I think, help to give me a tremendous appreciation for the country. And one of the things that I hope to do on Actionable Intelligence is also bring people stories from around the world that matter to them here at home, that matter to them and their families.
Right. I think that's so important. I mean, you take a look at some of the sad, horrific incidents that are taking place in Europe at the moment. There's beheading of this teacher just the other day from a Chechen refugee.
That's right.
And it boggles the mind. We warned people like Angela Merkel and all these European commissioners who were just opening the borders, throwing the borders open. Look, we can all agree that there are people out there that need help, and we all try and do our uttermost as human beings to help these people. But throwing the borders open and all these things, it just hurt. So I'm so glad to hear you say that you're going to be covering international news, because that is something in the US media landscape that is actually really, really missing.
It's been
bizarre.
really missing, and it's central to American culture. I mean, you think about Ronald Reagan saying, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall."
Right.
People around the world still look to the United States. They still look to us for leadership. They still look to us for inspiration. Right. And the fact is, what happens overseas matters to us. And one of the things, President Reagan always said, yes, of course we're a welcoming country. We've always been. But there was some sensibility about how to be welcoming. There was some sensibility about how we actually built a more perfect union here. And I think that we have, again, this tremendous history. There's no country in the history of the planet that has been more well integrated than the United States of America. We have a lot to look back on with pride, and I think a lot of reasons for confidence moving forward.
Okay, just remind us very quickly when and where we can watch the show.
6 p.m. Eastern, right here, Actionable Intelligence every night, and tonight a special at 8 p.m. Eastern on supporting our law enforcement.
We'll be tuned in. I might have to have you on background on mute, though, Governor, because we have our town hall for our members at 6 p.m. tonight. A little bit of a clash there, but I'm sure it won't do too much damage to your ratings. We'll be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. here on the National Pulse.